Welcome to the Survivor's Chair podcast, a podcast where we break down our stories and our trauma, understanding how they have impacted our career and our life. This is a place where we break free from shame, own our truth, and step into our power, one story at a time. Hi, I'm Kim, an adoptee, a former foster youth, hairstylist, salon owner, breast cancer, and complex trauma survivor. So join us, pull up a chair, in this no sugarcoating, no holding back, honest conversation about healing and success.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 20 of the Survivor's Chair podcast. Today, I'm going to talk about transitions, and I'm talking about transitions mostly for women because that's my lived experience. I'm in this transition right now after coming off of cancer diagnosis, closing my business, taking care of my mother who had Alzheimer's, dementia. So a lot of transitions. And I feel like women in their 50s and above, again, my experience, in my 40s, I was like, oh, I actually don't know what I'm doing. You know, your 30s, you're like, I got this. I know what I'm doing. I know what I want. I'm mature. And you're on this path of life and you're building your careers and your family or whatever. And you're like, I got this. And then you hit 40 and, oh no, I don't have this. I actually don't know what I'm doing at all. And you realize just how much you don't know. And then you hit 50. Now, I'm going to be 57 in a couple weeks, and something happens to women. Something happens to us, and we're done. We're tired. We don't want to take care of anybody anymore. We're done organizing. We've worked a million hours a week, whether that was running a household or raising children or running a business or making sure everybody and everything was all set and everybody had everything they needed that was around us. Any of their wants or desires, they just had to mention it or not. And we would sort it out, figure it out, and make sure that everybody had everything. And we didn't even make it on the list. We didn't even make it anywhere near I'm important or I have wants and needs. We didn't even make it there. We were way too busy taking care of everybody. Now we're in this stage of 50, right? And there's a lot of us that are taking care of our parents. Again, it's typically the woman who steps into that role. I'm not going to say that there's not men out there that don't do these things, but it's kind of rare compared to women. Most women end up with the brunt of stuff like that. So now we end up taking care of our parents in our 50s. You're getting a breath where your kids are maybe going off to college and you've got a minute to yourself. And then your parents, they need you. We're trying to figure out life in our 50s. We're tired. We don't want to caretake anymore. We don't want to do it anymore. We're pooped. And I think for most of us, we're just realizing at 50 that or 50 plus that we weren't on the list. We never asked for more. We wanted more. We needed more. We needed help. We wanted help, but we never asked for it. Nope. We sat in our silence and powered through every day, regardless of how we felt. And in your 50s, comes menopause, and menopause changes everything, whether we like it or not. And I think what happens in our 50s is that we want change. We're ready for change. And we find ourselves like frustrated and annoyed and angry and tired. And now we have to learn how to put ourselves first. Like we don't even know how to do that. But we don't really want to teach anybody how to do that because we're tired. So it's this vicious cycle. Like we're so tired of telling people what to do. You know, we don't want to tell them what to do to take care of us or to help us in our day. We want them to figure it out. And people just don't figure it out, especially because we have taught them how we should be treated. We have taught them that our needs and wants are not important. So they, for years, the people around us, friendships, relationships, whatever it is, work, we have showed them what we need, which is nothing. So for them, it's like, what's happening right now? How come you're changing the rules? You know, and a lot of us in our relationships with our partners, we've done the switch and we've become the mother, the caretaker. We're not even their friend anymore. Other people are their friends. I find that in my own relationship. And I'm like, okay, when did that shift happen? Or did I just not notice it? And to be honest, I don't think he noticed it either until I brought it to his attention. As we know, relationships are an ongoing process, an ongoing growing and learning. And hopefully you can be with somebody who wants to grow and learn. If not, you end up off kilter and hopefully you can come back in when you have big transitions in life that throws things off and you're trying to figure it out. And I've had so many transitions in the past 5 years, which I'm going to talk about. It's navigating our relationships and what our role has been in our relationships and how we can change that, because again, I'll say it again, we are tired. We don't want to be anybody's mother. We don't want to do it. Even if you're a mother, you're forever going to be somebody's mother. I'm going to talk about my lived experience, my experience. I am not here to tell somebody how to live their life or tell somebody they're doing something wrong, because that's not even a thing, because we're all learning. This is my lived experiences and the things that I have found out about myself and my life along the way. For me, the caretaking piece, that was big. And it still is. Like I do like to do things for people and care for people, but in a healthy way. Now, it's not in an unhealthy way. Before it was an unhealthy way. And the unhealthy way was it was at the beck and call for everybody. It didn't matter if you worked for me, you were my friend, you were my family. If you picked up the phone, I came running. Even if I didn't have to, even if I wasn't asked, it wasn't like somebody was saying, you have to be here, but I was, oh, I have to be there, because I was feeling a need in myself that was missing. I was trying to fill a missing piece of being wanted and needed. Caretaking made me feel good. It made me feel like I had a purpose. Sometimes if we're told when we're younger that we're not good enough, or there's been actions or things that happened in our life that made us feel not good enough, for me, it was being abandoned in a car at 1 year old. I always felt discarded, like a piece of trash, not worthy of life. Whatever's happened in our life when we were younger has shaped us into who we are today. I feel like when you get to your 50s, you're a little bit smarter. Even if you haven't sorted out your trauma or you haven't sorted out life, you're just a little bit smarter. And maybe that comes with just being fed up and tired. I don't know. I don't know. We expect more out of our relationships and our friendships and our job and our life than we ever did before, because we have this little eye opening like, wait, I'm on the backside of my life here. Not that I don't have lots of great years ahead. How do I want to live those years? What do I want to do with those years? Am I giving up those years for somebody else, for something else, or am I going to have those years for myself? And it doesn't mean you're selfish. It doesn't mean that you're blocking out the whole entire world and you're like, screw everybody. I'm here for me. It's not about that. It's about, how do you want to live your life? How do you want to live your life now? Because we're talking about transitions. I am in one of the biggest transitions of my life. Even though I've had a lot of things happen in the past few years, this is the biggest transition for me. I spent 40 years of my life building my career, building my business. But was I doing it for myself? Or was I doing it for other people? Or was I doing it because it's what other people expected me to do? And that's an interesting thing to think about when you're doing something. Why am I doing this? Am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for my life? Or am I doing it because it's what people expect me to do? It's what society expects me to do, right? That's a good question to ask yourself, because a lot of the times for me, it was what other people expected me to do, what society expected me to do. I worked in my salon even before I opened the salon. I worked like a crazy person, a zillion hours a week. I undercharged for all my services because I didn't feel worthy of anything else. I didn't feel worthy of more. And I write about it in my book. I write in my book about being grateful for every little itty bitty morsel of life or anything that I got from anybody. Like, I should be grateful. And it's kind of an adoptee trait. And it's kind of what we're told. You got to be grateful because who knows where you would have ended up. I mean, I've heard you better be grateful because you could have ended up in a gutter somewhere. Told that many times. But I was like, oh, thank God somebody wants me. Thank God somebody maybe loves me. Doesn't feel like it, but maybe they do. I don't know. Every little itty bitty morsel I was supposed to be grateful for, no matter what it was. If there wasn't food, but we had bread, I had to be grateful that there was bread and not think about or ask or want or need anything more than that. That was supposed to be enough. In my abusive relationships, I should be grateful of that little itty bitty morsel of attention and that little thing that could be love, but really wasn't. And don't ask for anything more. That was the key. Don't ask for anything more. This was enough. And if you ask for more, you're being greedy. You're not worthy of more. That was enough. You were lucky to have what you had. Right. And, at the same time, in my business, I had my business, but I put up with employees and customers that were horrible, abusive, not nice. And, I kept employees that were awful. They were terrible. They were mean. They were nasty, but I was just grateful to have an employee there. It makes no sense now. I had a client for 30 years that came in every 2 weeks and literally abused me every 2 weeks. He despised women. He despised what women was about. He sat in my chair and called them pigs or us pigs. And he was awful. 30 years I did his hair every 2 weeks. And it wasn't till I lost a very dear friend and I had his funeral and there was a snowstorm and his work was closed and I had to rearrange my schedule for the funeral and I had to cancel his appointment and then his appointment was canceled because of the snowstorm and he was a raving lunatic. And I was like, I can't do that. His last appointment was on a Christmas Eve in the morning. He came in. I cut his hair. Neither one of us spoke a word because he was pissed at me and I was pissed at him. And he walked out that door and I got a card and I wrote in it and said, I'm sorry, but I can no longer accommodate you. Good luck. I wish you the best. Goodbye. It took me 30 years to do that. It's amazing. And that was only 5 years ago that I did that. And the thing is, I was in therapy for 12 years. I did talk therapy, I did dream therapy. And, a lot of people are curious about dream therapy, and maybe I'll do just an episode on therapy. But we didn't talk about snakes and whether your teeth were falling out or anything like that. It was about the emotions behind your dreams. It was about the things that we couldn't process during the day because we wouldn't be able to get through the day. And it was about our subconscious trying to process all those emotions, that overwhelming emotions that we had. It was amazing. I did that for 12 years. But the thing is, like, the bottom line is, like, I was like, oh, I'm good, right? I'm good. I was in therapy. I did therapy. I'm good. Well, I couldn't see or recognize the patterns that I had going on in my life, despite the therapy. I was kind of blind to all of it. It wasn't until I was diagnosed with cancer in 2023 that was the frying pan over the head moment for me. Yes, doing the work leading up to that has helped my life and changed my life and all of those things. That was the frying pan I needed. That was the hit on the head that I needed. That was my hard stop, was cancer. And like I said, I was better. I was better than I was in my 20s, no question about it. I decided to close my business in 2021 after 30 years. I just couldn't give any more of myself to anybody or anything. And I didn't want to or be the one to organize every day for everybody. I didn't want to take care of anybody anymore. I was just getting into that I'm tired mode. I spent my career training new stylists, hiring them from high school, hairdressing school. A lot of times they were in high school because I'm a huge supporter of vocational education. And I loved that. I loved training them. I loved showing them a path that was successful when we were told we were in a career that was never going to be successful. It was looked at as a dead end career, and that was all you could do because you weren't smart enough. So it was so nice to bring them in to show them that they could be successful. But the problem was that I was showing people or telling people a lot of times that they could be successful, and I was caring more than they did. And you can't do that. You can't care more than somebody else does about anything, about their life, about their success. You just can't. Their health, you can't care more than they do. It doesn't work. It's like banging your head against the wall. So as I got closer to the end of business, I would say the last like 8 years or so, 5 to 8 years, it was getting exhausting. I was banging my head against the wall. Things needed to change. The industry was changing. I knew I needed to make big changes if I wanted to keep up. And I didn't feel like it. I didn't want to. I had reinvented myself 100 times over because that's what you have to do in business. You can't stay the same. If you stay the same, you're going to be stagnant. I wasn't up for the big changes that needed to happen. I just wasn't up for it. So I decided to close my business and I instantly felt like this wave of relief. Oh my gosh, my life is going to be mine. I can't wait. What am I going to do with the time? I had no plan. I had no idea what I was going to do. I'll figure it out. I had my book going on. I had some things with salon owners going on. I was going to launch a salon owners networking group membership, which I did for like a millisecond and then realized that my heart wasn't into that either, but I didn't know what to do. And the other thing that happened before I closed my business was COVID. COVID was one of the most stressful times in a business owner's life. And I'll speak for myself because it was for me, but I think a lot of business owners would say the same. The changes that we had to make, the fear that we had, I had a huge fear about getting sick. I didn't want to get sick, and I felt this overwhelming responsibility for my staff, their families, my customers, their families, me, my family, to keep everybody healthy. It was my responsibility to make sure that people didn't get sick. And what came with that was the guidelines from the government, which made it very challenging. When we did reopen, we had half the space that we could use, half the time that we were open, half the staff that were there, and we were supposed to make our business work as it did before COVID, which was impossible. I had stylists that came back that didn't want to work as much as they did before. I had one stylist who was out 2 weeks every month, I think, because she was exposed or she thought she was exposed or she was sick, thought it was COVID, wasn't good. It was just, and the cancellations. My receptionist at the time was my niece, and she was overwhelmed with having to reschedule people in a schedule that didn't allow us to work the way that we did before. And it was very, very, very stressful. And with that stress, when we came back, I got sick. And what happened was I started having all of these allergic reactions that would go into anaphylactic. 3 times at work, I had to leave and go to the ER because I didn't know what was happening. I was having these crazy reactions. And what I found out was that I had mast cell activation. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that is if you've never heard that before. So our mast cells are part of our defense system in our body. Mast cells, when they are activated, it's the immune system alarm going off, and it's going off too loud, it's going off too much, and it's going off at the wrong times. So it's part of our defense system. It's the thing that helps us fight infections, injuries. They're released. They're like, there's danger in the body. I'm going to release these and I'm going to fix it. And the problem is that if it's off kilter, they release them when they're not supposed to, and it turns into chaos. So they are dysregulated and it is absolute chaos. So that's what I have going on. What makes your mast cells go into this chaos, just like that, right? First, I don't have a spleen, and it was removed when I was 18 from what they called back then as a blood disorder, ITP, and what is known now as an autoimmune disorder. It's when your immune system mistakenly attacks and destroys blood platelets, which the blood platelets that's responsible for clotting. So I was about 17 years old when this happened. And this is kind of a vulnerable story. And this is where I believe that the power of telling our stories takes the power away from the story. So I'm going to share all of the story. So I was 17 years old. I was covered in bruises head to toe. I had little red speckles all over my chest and all over my legs. And it was really weird. I still had my pediatrician. So I went to the pediatrician and he checked me for mono, and I didn't have mono. And he's like, well, I don't know what it is. Okay, I went on to my 17-year-old life. There was nothing after that. And, I'm sure he must have done blood work. So I'm not quite sure why that didn't show up. But so I went about my normal 17-year-old life, drinking, partying, drugs, whatever, all that fun stuff. And I looked like somebody who had been beaten up in an alleyway because you couldn't pat me on the shoulder without there being a big bruise afterwards. It was pretty fascinating. So as time went on, I had scheduled to have my wisdom teeth out because that's what you did. Just for a little side note, I still have 2 of them. And insurance would cover more of the procedure if I had it done in the hospital than in the office. So I chose to do it in the hospital. But when you do it in the hospital, they have to do blood work first to make sure everything's okay. So I went in, I had my blood work, and the dentist called me up and said, I cannot take your wisdom teeth out. And he said, do you bruise easily? And I said, oh my gosh, yeah, I have bruises all over my body. Like, what do I know? And he said, no, he said, you have to go see a blood doctor. And he said, if I took out your wisdom teeth, you might have bled to death on the table. He's trying to explain to me, I'm a kid, I don't know, right? My parents are involved and I make an appointment with this blood doctor. Even when I talk about this, it makes me sweat a little bit. That's how it lives in your body. Everything lives in your body. So I made an appointment with this doctor, and initially they thought that I had leukemia. They didn't tell me that at the time. And I ended up having to go for a bone marrow biopsy and, lots of blood work, bone marrow biopsy, and they took like 6 specimens out of my hip. And I remember feeling like my hip was going to get pulled out of whatever little incision that he had made. Like it was just going to get yanked out, like the pulling to get the piece of the bone. I'll never forget that. We're going to talk about trauma because this is what this podcast is all about. It's about trauma. It's about stories. And I am going to just share another trauma. So this whole thing is a trauma, right? What's going on in my life. I'm too young to really understand it. But I'm scared, and so I'm going to talk about, I'm scared and, I'm at a time in my life where I'm a teenager. I don't speak up for myself. I don't know about myself at all. I have my history that came before that, just be grateful for the morsel and don't say anything and be silent, don't upset anybody and all of those things. So I go into that with this. So I go see this blood doctor. He does the bone marrow biopsy. I do not have leukemia. Good, few, great. He says it's ITP, whatever that is. And if whatever we do doesn't work, he's going to have to take out my spleen because that's what they did back then. They do not do that anymore. Okay, whatever. I don't even know what a spleen is. Never even heard the word before, right? So he puts me on a massive, massive, massive dose of prednisone for 3 months. We do this twice and it doesn't work. My levels go up while I'm on the prednisone and then they crash down even further than they were before when I come off of the prednisone. So that is obviously not going to work. I'm going to tell you about the doctor. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that has experienced things like this in their life, females and males. I cannot discount males, but I'm going to speak from the female experience. So, and the more I share, the less power this story has over my life, right? And this is a story that I never really thought about until I was older. So I was scheduled every single week to go in and get my blood work checked because he wanted to check my levels, right? I would go in, I would get 5 vials of blood. And here's the part that I didn't quite get. So every time I went in to see him, he would bring me into the exam room by myself, alone, nobody else there. And he would stand. First, he would have me sitting on the table and he would stand in between my legs. When I tell you so close, he was this far from my face. And I remember feeling trapped and nervous and scared and I couldn't get out of there. But I didn't have the sense to be like, get out of my face, back up. And he was so uncomfortably close to me. And then he would have me take off my shirt and take off my bra every single time. And he would lay me down on the table and he would give me a breast exam every single time. Why? I don't know. It was a blood disorder. He talked about my breast. He talked about my tan lines. And I remember thinking, this is so uncomfortable. But he's the doctor, right? He's the one that knows I got to do what he tells me to do because he knows, right? He's the doctor. He's the authority. He's the authority that's abusing his power. It's exactly what he was doing. I'm sure I was not the only young girl or female in there that he did that to. But this is a story that I never thought about until I was much older. That was not right. That was not what was supposed to happen. So not only am I going through this illness that I am unsure of, but I have this happening to me every single week for months, 6 months. It was at least 6 months that I went in every single week. And because my blood couldn't stay up or whatever, the next step was to remove my spleen. So we did that. And I don't really remember. I mean, I used to call him names before I would have to go in there. But, yeah, I had a nickname for him that wasn't very nice when I would go in there. And I would say the nickname to my parents, but I never told them what he was doing. There was part of me that felt uncomfortable about telling somebody. All of it was just weird. So anyways, that's my vulnerable story for this episode. So why did I feel compelled to tell you that story? I've already mentioned it because it has less power over me the more I tell it. That's the first and foremost. The second is it gives somebody else permission to voice when something doesn't feel right. right? To find your voice and say, this is not okay. You cannot do this. This is wrong. Da 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 da. And third, it plays into the theme in my life of, being silent, the people pleasing, making sure everyone else is comfortable. Don't question anybody. Nobody knows what's best for you. You don't know what's best for you. Everybody else does. Right. I was a 17-year-old kid, but this theme has played out my whole entire life. And if you go back to this 50-year-old me that's in this transition, it's just figuring out that what I want in life. Like I'm finally figuring out what it is that I want. Nobody is going to tell me what's best for me anymore, right? That's a 50-year-olds give me a little like hand raise if you feel the same way about that. So when I learned that this mast cell activation that was happening, what I learned about it was that it's an immune response. It's an immune issue, right? So everything started to kind of flow together. So in the history of the mast cell activation and how it hit me, I already said I left three times work to go to the ER because I was having anaphylactic. It was an extreme allergy reaction to everything. I could not eat anything that grew from a tree or grew from the ground for 8 months. I ate only grilled cheese sandwiches for 8 weeks straight because that's the only thing that didn't give me a reaction. My lips swelled. I had hives all over my body. My throat closed. I had to give myself an EpiPen and call 911 on the highway. And that was from the scent of garlic. It wasn't even from eating it. I had had that happen a couple times with scent. And it was just crazy. It was crazy. So I had feared garlic forever ever anywhere in a restaurant. I wouldn't go out to eat. I mean, the fear was unbelievable. So these anaphylactic responses were crazy. I didn't go anywhere without Benadryl. And I think that what the bottom line and the biggest lesson here is that my body was trying to talk to me. My body was trying to tell me I needed it to stop. I had to stop working that last year the salon was open because of the reactions. I hated my job at that time. I didn't like it for the last couple years and I didn't want to do it anymore. But yet I powered through because that was what people expected me to do. And at the same time, who was I if I wasn't a salon owner? Like, what the hell do I do with my life if I'm not doing that? My body was screaming at me, you need to change, you need to stop. And I was not listening to it. And because I didn't have a spleen and the spleen plays such a huge role in your immune system, my immune system had to work even harder, which again made the mast cells more reactive. You can see how it's all tied together. And this is the really interesting part about mast cell activation and trauma and what triggers a mast cell activation. So yes, I didn't have a spleen. So my immune system had to work harder, but it probably wouldn't have been such an issue if the mast cell didn't go on such high alert. And it went on such high alert because it works and communicates so closely to the nervous system. And we talked about the nervous system maybe like 5 or 6 podcasts ago and how it works. And if your system's in chronic stress, a dysregulated stress response, which is otherwise known as survival mode, which I was in my entire life to the extreme, that pushes mast cell into overdrive. So all these contributed factors, right? Chronic inflammation, which is another thing that can trigger it, and or unresolved inflammation. It's all just tied together. There's other things too, like environmental exposures, gastrointestinal issues, genetics that could play into it too, which I could have a little of all of it, right? So basically, autoimmune disorders can make it overreact. So obviously, my ITP that was classified as a blood disorder, and I was 17, but then known as an autoimmune disorder, which they do not take your spleen out anymore for that because it could be a temporary thing, is what they've learned. Everything was kind of stacked against me. So obviously, something's going to implode. And, I was in, like I said, one of the most stressful times in my life with the COVID and the salon and just not wanting to do what I wanted to do anymore and keeping everybody safe and all of those things that I already mentioned. And what started happening at the same time was, well, I should say, yeah, it started happening at the same time. So that last year that I wasn't working because I was trying to figure out my world, and I started working with a nutritionist who changed my life. Thank God. She gave me the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And I read that and it was life altering. And that's called The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, which is where I have my certification in traumatic research studies from. I attend the trauma conference every year, which he runs. And that book and that nutritionist, Heather, thank you, has changed my life and helped me understand what my body holds on to and the importance of listening to our body. And so it's no surprise that my body was imploding because it had endured 50 years of absolute chaos and stress and trauma and lack of sleep and lack of taking care of myself and drug use and alcohol abuse and abusive relationships and on and on and on and on and on, going against everything in my body, everything that I wanted, needed, or wanted to say. I never said, I never did. I didn't cry. I didn't show emotions. I had to be strong. I had to push through. I had to do things I didn't want to do because that's what you did. I had pushed my body to its absolute limit. So I thought, right? Sounds like I did. So I thought. So that last year of not working, my mother was showing signs of dementia. And um, I think she even had signs, I would say even 10 years before that, but I didn't really notice. To me, I was more annoyed with her. Like, why couldn't she take her trash out anymore? Why didn't she take care of her cat anymore? Why didn't she call? Why did she get lost driving? That made no sense. It just didn't click. It didn't click. And I was more annoyed with her than anything. So that last year, she needs a little bit more of a helping hand. And it was no big deal, right? But I got to the end of that year and I cannot take care of myself and run this business. They don't go hand in hand because this business has taught me to not take care of myself. So I decided in 2021, I woke up one day, I just woke up and I said, you know what? I'm closing this business. I'm done. I've had enough. I'm going to give everybody 6 weeks. Clients, staff, I'll help my staff find jobs. I'll help my clients find a place to land. I was done. I couldn't work, right? Because of my allergies. Even though they were getting so much better and I could eat again, I could eat salads, but I couldn't do it another day. So I woke up, I announced that, went through all that. And December, right before Christmas 2021, I closed the door of my salon without a plan, without anything. And like I said in the beginning, it was finally like my life is going to be mine. I'm so excited. What am I going to do first? I'm going to take a year, figure it out. I'm going to take care of me. Da, 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 da. And 2 months after that, my mother took a turn for the worst. And her dementia came in full throttle. And maybe it was me having the time and space to notice it. I don't know. Well, I don't have the answer for that. I had just taken, the time to try to sort out my allergies, and that was getting better. And I was getting my life back on track until my mother. So slowly learning to take care of myself, realizing that this trauma had impacted my life, and um, learning more about trauma, and again, until my mother. So what happened to my mother is slowly over time. I say slowly, but I think now when I look back, it happened actually pretty quick. And I think COVID had something to do with that. I think the isolation of COVID, I would bring her groceries, I would knock on her window, I would wave and say hi, and I would call her or whatever. I think that made her take a turn, to be honest. It started with her bills. All of a sudden, her bills got messed up. So I had to help her do that and sort that out. And she was giving money away to people. People were taking advantage of her. I really had to be more involved. I ended up having to spend more time there, which was fine, but I still had like a little bit of a life. And then she fell, smashed her head. And she was in her own apartment and she went back to her apartment. And that was the beginning of the end. And it got to the point where I had to be there every single night. I didn't stay there, but I would stay it until like 9:30 at night. We did puzzles every night, it was kind of, I could probably do a podcast on this alone because we really kind of reframed our relationship at that time. It was nice actually, despite what was going on with her, it was still nice. But my time was over. Gonna have my life and my time back. That was done. It got to the point where she didn't know where she lived. She didn't understand that that was her apartment. She was escaping at night. I had put cameras in her apartment. I was up all night long watching the cameras because I was getting alerted and calling her when she was getting ready to walk out the door at 2 o'clock in the morning. And the next day she would tell me that some stranger called her. Even though she never forgot who I was. She never forgot who I was. But it was a lot. And to the point where I had to find a place for her. She was in a place that had memory care. She fell there a couple times to the point where she ended up in awful, awful rehab for 9 weeks after a bad fall. And all they did was over medicate her so that she would stay in a chair. They told me that she was agitated and this, that, and the other thing. She lost her ability to communicate, to talk. So she would do a little like, if she wanted something. It's just a sad thing. There's a lot of things that happened that I am still trying to sort out. I say I feel guilty, and I think that's a natural thing. You always wish you could do more, even though it wasn't humanly possible for me to do more. Her losing her ability to communicate was really hard because she was still there. Like I said, I could do a whole podcast about that, but I became her voice. I became her everything. I became her advocate on so many levels. I did try to get help for her when she was in her apartment. That didn't work out. It's such a broken system for our seniors. I can't say that enough. I was on overdrive. Again, I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't taking care of myself. I stopped working out. And my stress level was an all-time high because not only am I caretaking to the extreme again, but you're watching somebody go a little bit every day. You're grieving somebody as the time goes by. So ultimately, my mother ended up in a nursing home. And I have stories about that too. I won't get into, but again, that could be a whole nother podcast. But shortly after my mother was placed in a nursing home, a couple days before my 55th birthday, I went in for my follow-up appointment for my mammogram because I had a biopsy 6 months before that on my right breast, and they wanted me to just go back in and make sure everything was okay. I was so stressed out and so busy at that time. I attempted to cancel it online. Thankfully, they don't let you do that. And I had a note on my computer for weeks and weeks and weeks to reschedule that appointment because I did not have time to take care of myself. Hello, every woman out there. But as it got closer and closer and closer, I was like, you know what? When else are you going to do it? Just go and do it because you don't have any other time. Squeeze it in. I had to go to work. If I knew the appointment was going to be tight, I was like, just go do it. So I went and did it, and they kept me there longer than usual. They asked me to do an ultrasound, which I normally did anyways, but I did not have time because I had to get to work. And they said, can you come back tomorrow? Come back tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, I'll come back tomorrow. No big deal. Like, what are you so worried about? I went back the next day and they did an ultrasound. We found something. We need to do a biopsy. And I'm like, that's great. They're like, can you come in a couple days? Yeah, great. Whatever. We've already done this once. We've already been down this path. No big deal. Of course we can do it, right? I had the biopsy in two spots, and I was diagnosed with stage 2A, grade 3, which is the aggressiveness, the highest level of aggressiveness of cancer, which is a 3, HER2 positive breast cancer in my left breast. I was there for my follow up on my right breast. And the woman said to me, you know what? It's close to your mammogram, anyways. Let's just do the left breast while you're here. And I'm like, perfect. If I did not have that left breast done, if I had canceled that appointment, this HER2 positive breast cancer is one of the most aggressive breast cancers. That cancer would have spread like wildfire through my body in a matter of no time. I mean, that cancer was not there a year before that when I had my mammogram. And I had a tendency, I would push my mammograms out. I'd go 2 years instead of a year because nothing was ever going to happen to me, right? So it's just how everything aligned. That's when I'm like, somebody's out there looking after you because somebody was telling me don't cancel that appointment. So I immediately went to test lab scans, chemo, immunotherapy. I did that for a year, and then I ended with a double mastectomy. I'm a year and a half of no evidence of disease, almost a year out from treatment in a couple weeks. My last treatment was on my birthday last year in September. So all's good in that department. My mother passed away during my second chemo treatment, which put me in the hospital with some kind of infection. But chemo kicked my ass. It kicked my ass like I never thought anything would kick my ass before. Some people work through it. I don't know how anybody did that. I could not walk down a flight of stairs. I was weak. I was shot. I was whatever. It's amazing because cancer was the hard stop that I needed. I was not going to change my life without that massive punch in the face. Massive. Nothing was bad enough for me to change my life, to change me, to take control over my life, to heal my body, to take care of my body and my mind. Nothing was enough until cancer. Despite all the therapy I did, what I've realized now at this stage of my life, it was surface level therapy. Aside from dream therapy, I wasn't in the place for that to work as well as it probably could have because of where I was in my life. But talk therapy was all surface level stuff. Talk therapy isn't the best thing for people who have gone through trauma. And I've talked about that before. Like, we need other things first, which is what I know now. I am only now learning what I need for myself, from myself, and from the people around me. And I'm going to bring this back to the beginning of this podcast. And you've made it through the whole entire thing. And if you are the overachiever, the overworker, the caretaker, the over people pleaser, the overgiver, the over the top perfectionist, the person who stays silent, the one that doesn't want to upset anyone or make anyone uncomfortable because you have been so used to being uncomfortable, it has become a way of life. This podcast and these stories are for you. I'm sharing these so that you can see the other side. There's another side. I am not through it. I am not on the other side. I am learning how to get to the other side. I am learning what's important. I am learning the importance of my body and taking care of it. I am learning the importance of my mind and how to take care of it. I am learning the importance of knowing my patterns and breaking them, even though it's hard and uncomfortable. So the woman and the man out there that need to hear this stuff. This life is a one-stop shop. We do not get a do-over. And in your 50s, you're on the next end of your life. What are you going to do with that? How do you want to live that piece of your life? Do you want to keep doing what you've been doing? Or do you want change? Do you crave change? How do you change? What do you do first? Right? Go back and listen to the beginning of the podcast. Nothing happens overnight. It's a process. Keep listening to the stories. But I promise you, you will feel so much better. I'm in this transition right now. I don't know what my next phase looks like. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I don't know. But you know what? I need to take the time right now. I need to take care of myself. I need alone time. I need peace. I need contentment. I can't watch scary movies anymore. I can't watch drama movies. I just want 70s soft rock, yacht rock radio, the woods, the mountains, That's very simple things. I don't want anything extreme in my life anymore. But I'm learning. I'm learning how to speak up. I'm learning how to voice my needs and my wants. And I'm grateful in a different way than I used to be. I'm grateful for my ability to let go of some of these old patterns and to not be perfect, but to continue to work on it. And I'm grateful to have the time that I have right now to work through it all, like recognizing that there's so many of us that are still working like crazy people and trying to raise children and taking care of parents and the chaos of that. And I don't want to put myself last anymore. And I want to be in the front of the line. And I don't need anybody else to put me in the front of the line. Say it again, over 50-year-old women, we're tired. We need change. I'm here to give you permission. I want to give you permission to take a chance and to do one thing that helps you feel good after this podcast. One thing. Anything that reduces your stress, calms your body. 5 minutes. I don't care. That's where you can start. When I said, how do you start? What do you do? It's 5 minutes. Just take 5 minutes for yourself, whatever that looks like, to support your body and your mind. And it's hard to feel. I'm not going to lie. It's hard to feel because when you shut down and when you take a step back and when you stop, usually the feel comes in. And that can be hard. I totally respect that. So if you can only do it for 2 minutes and then you're going to move on, so be it. And you know what? Just do it again for 2 minutes. Next time, maybe you do it for 3 minutes. Sit with yourself. And there's so many things that you can do. You can journal, go for a walk in nature for 5 minutes, whatever makes you feel good. Like swimming to me is such a great meditation. The breathing, I found it very hard to meditate because I couldn't shut my brain off. Meditation is anything that you can take yourself out of your mind for a couple minutes, out of that chatter, that chaos. So whatever it is, if it's a walk, it's journal, jumping rope, I don't care. I don't care what it is, anything. Listen to your body because it is always, always talking to us. It's always trying to tell us what we need, and we do not listen to it because it knows best. It knows better than we do. When you get out of your head and into your body, you'll realize that things are so different and so much more calm because your mind is just chatter and chaos, where your body is chaos too. But when you learn how to get it into a place of relaxation, it's pretty amazing. Anyways, so with that said, this is a long podcast. It's a lot of vulnerability in there, a lot of storytelling, but I think it's important. Like I said, when you tell your stories and people can relate to them, I get a lot of messages that people are like, oh my gosh, I feel like we've had this parallel life. And there's more of us out there than not that feel like we've had this similar life. And if I have to be the first one to say it out loud, then I'm going to say it out loud. That's the way it is. Somebody's got to go first. And you know what? I'll go first. And you want to share a story with me? You want to get something off your chest? You want to message me? You want to do it? By all means, just start somewhere. All right, my friends, if there's anybody out there that you think could benefit from this episode, some 50-year-old plus woman or man, share away. The more that we like, follow, and leave reviews, the more it allows us to get this podcast in the hands of people that need it and that it can help. And that is my ultimate goal with every single thing that I do in my life. I don't care about the masses. I care about the one person who needs to hear what I'm saying. So if that's you today, thank you for being here and thank you for listening. I can't thank you enough for your support, and I will see you next time in the Survivor's Chair.
Thank you for tuning into the Survivor's Chair podcast. You can head over to my website, www.kimrussellpro.com. That's KIMRUSSELLPRO.com. You can catch up on my blogs. Follow me on social, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or TikTok. All the links will be in the show notes, and I'll see you next time in the Survivor's Chair.